Senator Sinema.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My first question is for Mr. Elwell, but I welcome responses from any of our guests. According to media reports, the initial failure classification for the MCAS enabled its safety evaluation to be delegated to Boeing. And during, well, according to media reports, during testing, FAA did not completely and properly review technical documents provided by Boeing. So how do we ensure that FAA can take over safety evaluation if issues are discovered during the testing and evaluation phase?
Thank you for that question, Senator. What you're referring to is the Organizational Designation Authority. In the course of a certification such as an amended type cert that the 737 MAX went through, the FAA determines what aspects of the delegation or what aspects of the certification can be delegated. And usually those are normal, well-known legacy type systems. And in the case of the 737 MAX, we, the FAA, retained MCAS for review at the beginning of the certification process. As the process goes on, ODA is amended and is amended many times in the course of a certification as the FAA reviews and certifies the expertise of the manufacturer to take on more of the delegated authority under very strict review by the FAA. And we, at times in the course of a certification, will find areas that we want to pay more attention to, and we will retain those items. So it is a active, constantly changing dynamic in a certification, and that's what happened during the certification of the MAX.
A second question then for you, Mr. Elwell. So MCAS is new to the Boeing MAX aircraft, and I was wondering if you could talk to us about why the system was not included in pilot training materials, and who makes the determination regarding what is included in pilot training materials?
So when we're doing a new certification, whether it's an amended or a new type, there's a flight standardization board that is a group of experts and pilots and engineers whose responsibility it is to determine, and in this case, an amended type certificate, if the handling characteristics of the new aircraft require flight training, or if the differences between the new aircraft and the one that it's amending does not require flight training. What the MCAS did was correct for some very slight modifications that the MAX had. The MAX has slightly larger diameter engines with not a whole lot of extra thrust, similar thrust, but because of the width of the engines, they had to go forward on the wing. And because of the diameter of the engines, the nose wheel had to be extended 6 inches. These are not big changes as far as the FAA is concerned for an amended. But what we need to do is put pilots in simulators and fly the aircraft that's being amended and the new aircraft. And after many scenarios, flights in all regimes, sim flights in all regimes with these pilots, there was a consensus opinion from the pilots, the European, Canadian, American pilots, that there was no marked difference in the handling characteristics of these two aircraft. And that is what we need to determine what kind of flight training or not is needed. And there was, by the recommendation of the Flight Standardization Board, and understand this is a board that has been used dozens and dozens of times, and their unanimous opinion was flight training was not needed. And they didn't flight test the MCAS per se because, as I said, the MCAS is a device that is supplement to another system that is specifically designed for the yoke to feel correctly to the pilot in all regimes of flight.
My last question is for each of the witnesses, and I wonder if you have suggestions for legislative or regulatory changes that can ensure an aircraft is independently and appropriately evaluated for operational safety. Is there more we need to do?
Thank you, Senator Sinema. Thank you, Senator Sinema. Yes, there may be. However, for me as Inspector General to offer suggestions today would be entirely premature. As you know, Secretary Chow Senator Blumenthal and other congressional requesters have asked my office to start at the very beginning, thinking of these as bookends. We want to look at the certification process. I can outline very quickly for you what that'll entail. We want to look at the key decisions made by FAA when certifying the airplane and the timeline. We want to determine when MCAS was added to the aircraft and why FAA approved it, or the extent of FAA's involvement in Boeing's decision to approve it. How FAA reached the decision that pilots did not need additional training, or that details about the new system did not need to be included in the airplane's manual. That's the first bookend. The second bookend, in my view, will be how FAA responded to the recent accidents, and that's specifically Senator Blumenthal's question. Clearly, confidence in FAA as the gold standard for aviation safety has been shaken. We can help provide information to the Secretary and to the Congress to determine how best to restore FAA to that position. The second bookend, we hope, will shed some light on the obvious question as to why FAA might have been the last. It was the last, in fact, safety regulator to decide to ground the 737 MAX. Other safety regulators around the world decided that in their role as safety regulators, they needed to drive risk to zero, and they did that by grounding the aircraft. Acting Administrator Elwell has testified that they were continuing the hunt for data in order to inform that decision. So that disparity, that apparent disparity in appreciation of the safety regulator's role should be another question I respectfully submit for the Congress and the Secretary. We hope to present information to all of you to help inform your decision-making.
Ranking Member Sinema, thank you for your question. The NTSB has looked at that issue as it relates to particular crashes. For example, coming out of the 2013 Asiana crash at San Francisco, we recommended that the FAA convene a special certification design review of how the Boeing 777 automated flight control system controls airspeed. And we wanted the FAA to look at that, and we've classified that recommendation as open, alternate, acceptable response. Coming out of the 787 battery fire event that we investigated that same year, we talked about the use of engineering designees. Since 1999, we've issued 8 recommendations to the FAA concerning the use of engineering designees. 3 are still open. The remaining 4 have been closed acceptably. We do want the FAA to provide certification engineers with written guidance, training to address opportunities to improve the certification process outcomes. And so that would be where we stand on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Elwell, you told Senator Sinema that part of certification was based on pilots flying simulators in multiple different scenarios. Did any of those scenarios include angle of attack sensors malfunctioning and reporting the wrong data to the MCAS system?
So I can get an answer for you on that, but I don't believe so. I believe that they were all in the full range of the flight envelope for flight characteristics. Again, the MCAS, the issue of an AOA vane giving the MCAS the wrong information, causing it to give nose down input to the stabilizer trim, presents as a scenario all pilots are trained on and familiar with. It's called runaway stabilizer trim, and the actions that they take to defeat it are the same as they would find in any other cause of a stab trim malfunction, which could be the motor going off when it shouldn't. So it is indistinguishable to the pilot.
Chairman Wicker.
Thank you, Senator Cruz.